The bell curve is there for everyone who knows about it in most corporations. It is the way populations are managed. So let's look at what the bell curve is first before we look at how it is applied to corporations. So if you look at the original idea of the bell curve is if you take the entire population of a country or a particular group and you were looking at the height of the average man, for example, and if the average height is 5 feet 9 inches, so anyone who is 7 feet would fall on the extreme right of our bell curve, and someone who was 4 feet would fall on the extreme left. So that's the number of people given a number, say a percentage of 100, would fall into the extremes of a bell curve. So there are many parameters that follow a bell curve. It could be the weight of a person, it could be any number of parameters without getting into detail. So you could think of any group of people, any population, and you could look at scores. A lot of education is based on this, saying who are the toppers, who gets 100 marks versus someone who gets 80 marks, 75 marks. So you could distribute this bell curve across several parameters, and it has been used very effectively. At the same time, it has been misused in many cases. But let's understand what we mean by the bell curve and how it applies to corporations. So broadly in corporations, several corporations have deployed this, notably GE, Motorola. There are others who have these bell curves, and whether they're transparent and tell you about it or not internally, perhaps this is the only way that they try and uh, get to understand who are your achievers, who are at the top of the bell curve, and who are your underachievers, who are at the bottom of the bell curve. And how do you move people from one level to the next in terms of actually delivering for the organization? And this is particularly a problem when you have a million employees or 250,000 employees, when you have large numbers, because you'd have to compare apples as apples, oranges as oranges, and you have to appear fair in everything that you're doing. Performance appraisal falls into these, whether you're doing it twice a year, annually. So the performance appraisals eventually help get the organization sorted out. Broadly, this is originally done quite effectively in companies like GE, as I had said before. So broadly, it divides for larger number of corporations into 6 groups. To keep it simple, we'll divide this population into 100. So if you have 100 employees, you'll have 50 on the left, 50% or 50 of them on the left, and you'll have 50 on the right. Again, this breaks up into 30, 15, and 5. So that makes it 50. So the top 5% are considered the achievers and who are performing extremely well, who need to be nurtured, taken up to the next level. And the bottom 5% are typically put into reviews or development programs and given an opportunity over 2 quarters or 4 quarters to perform. And if they don't, then they're taken out. So over a career, people move between these 6 blocks. So in a bell curve, so you have these, how it broadly works is, let's look at how it works in a software and then come back to this. So typically if I have, I'll show you in a software that we use ourselves, we have Plextra. And in this, if you look at all the employees here, there are about 200. In this example, there are 260 employees. And if you look at them, so I can have them sorted out in the top and bottom. So this is a demonstration, so it's randomly organized. But if I have a performance appraisal, so you can see that this breaks the 260 employees into the top 15%, the next is the 30%, the top 5%, the 15%, and then the 30% at the top. And then from the bottom 5%, and the bottom next to them, the 15%, who have to be nurtured and developed. So these are ways in which a bell curve is used in organizations to then look at what happens with the top 5%. Do we promote them? Do we give them more opportunities? So this is broadly how the bell curve works in organizations. Now, the good thing about this is it seems fair, because that's the way most populations will work. And when you're dealing with very large populations, perhaps there's no other way to look at this. But let's say you have ironically, let's say Bell Labs, and you had 100 R&D of the top scientists working for you. If you follow this, then even the bottom 5% are still performers and achievers. So in that case, it's completely unfair to say that the bottom five are underachievers or in any way. So this bins people and affects the morale and behavior of a group. It definitely affects the HR culture. It definitely affects the skill sets that have to be moved up from one level to the other. So while it is good and you may have these six bins, how you look at it is extremely important. That's why we have in this particular visual that you see that we have red to blue on the top, and equally it can be blue to red. You could even have, in fact, those are too clever, too smart, also are looked at rather negatively in companies because you don't want to encourage too much of own thought, believe it or not. You don't want to be having a bunch of entrepreneurs or people who create a lot of risk within the teams and organizations. So anyone who's not part of the norm, not who doesn't fall into line, also could fall into the red category. So it's not, that's where the good, the bad, and perhaps the ugly of it is the bell curve. So this is an overview of bell curve. As I had shown you, we also have that within our software Klaxtra platform, but it might not be the best way to take decisions or move people from skill sets and performance uh, appraisals with a bell curve. But this is the way many organizations do work.